Hello everyone. So I wanted to do kind of a review. Um, I'm first going to talk about the design and stuff, and then we're gonna get kind of closer in for a closer look at the model. So I bought this. This is the USS Zheng He, Zheng He.
The USS Zheng He.
Um, this is from Star Trek Picard, the series, and it's the model made by Eaglemoss. And kind of get a look at it there. So I want to start off by saying thank you to my wonderful um, supporters on Patreon. You guys made this review possible. So thank you so much. I love you. Um, yeah, so I don't often review this stuff like this, um, but I was waiting for the Voyager to come out, the round 2 Voyager, and it wasn't coming out and wasn't coming out. And I thought, well, there's this. I wanted to get it because I kind of like the design. I really only prefer it from a few angles, and I'll talk more about that when we get a closer look at it, at the model. But yeah, so in the show, this ship is known as the copy and paste ship, or it's a part of the copy and paste fleet. Um, yeah, you'll notice there aren't any windows on the bottom, and it's shocking how closely Eaglemoss followed the actual like CG model, because that's what they use to develop their physical models. And yeah, this ship, you can tell it was designed in a hurry. Well, it was designed back, I think, in 2006, um, but the actual CG asset, the model, was built in a hurry, and you can tell because it looks like um, a CGI asset from the 90s. It's very low res, very, very low res. Um, I'm surprised I didn't see any polygons, but the nacelles are, I mean, they're basically flat. There's not a whole lot of real 3D detail. Um, there are panel lines, but there's no, it's a flat surface that has some lines in it. It's not, there's no curves to it or anything. The Bassard collectors are just an outline, and there's no depth to them. You know, and yeah, it kind of is what it is. I do like it for the most part, except for this part of the ship, except for the bottom. Um, the design feels like, because it was designed by John Eaves, who had also designed the Enterprise E and a bunch of other ships um, from the Berman era of Star Trek. It feels like, and he had actually designed it right after Star Trek had ended in 2005. So it was still a part of that old school Trek lineage, and it shows, um, at least on the top. I don't think John Eaves had ever drawn any images of it from the bottom, and so all of this is the modern team there on Star Trek Picard, and this is vintage 2006 John Eaves, and it looks like it. Um, yeah, it's, as far as the model itself goes, The top here is the top of the saucer and the top of the secondary hull are metal, although they don't really feel like it. The bottom is plastic, and it feels very. It has a very weird kind of almost has a weird texture and feel to it. The plastic does, and it's very strange. Um, the pylons are plastic, which is I think a mistake on any of these models because one of my nacelles is bent slightly in the front, and that's something I'm going to have to try to fix. But and the nacelles are also plastic. It's not a horrible design, but the bottom of it, and from certain angles, it looks kind of like a beached whale. It just doesn't have the finesse, you know, because it was made in a hurry. So, yeah. But it's not terrible. What else? Yeah, I don't have the book with me, and I don't know. I don't think anybody's really itching to see what's inside the book. If you want to see that, there are plenty of other videos. Um, the hull detailing on the top is great, really nice. On the bottom, again, the bottom is where it just falls apart. Especially the paintwork. The paintwork, it looks very strange. It doesn't really look like a Starfleet ship at all. But I don't think that's Eaglemoss. I think that was just the model, you know, for the show. So I can't blame Eaglemoss here. I knew they were going to make this, and so back a year ago when the show aired, I was kind of like, okay, how are they going to do it? Are they going to use the actual CG model, or are they going to do a more realistic interpretation of what we saw on screen? Because I mean, you know, a low-res, low-polygon model. That's exactly what this is. No, they just made it look exactly like it was in the show. If you loved seeing that, then, well, this is the model for you. Eaglemoss, I know some people out there don't like it. They don't like the models, but, you know, if you're a fan of background ships, if you're a fan of every other ship other than the hero ship, then Eaglemoss is really, they really fill in those blanks. And there's a lot of non-hero ships that I love that would never have been made otherwise, were it not for Eaglemoss. So thank you, Eaglemoss, for that at least. As much as I love my hero ships, I also sometimes enjoy the background ships. So, yeah. I don't know what's going on with this deflector. I mean, I don't... You got me. Yeah. Okay, well, guess that's it. Let's take a closer look at this thing, shall we? Like I say, you know, the top is kind of where it's at in terms of detail. A lot of people think, and I tend to agree, that when Captain Riker showed up, that he should have either been on the Titan, which he commanded, or he should have been on the Enterprise E, or perhaps whatever the new Enterprise is, if there is a new Enterprise. Yeah, you'll notice on top there seems to be some hint of panel lines, kind of, but on the bottom it's just like, it looks like weathering, you know, kind of blotchiness. So it's a very odd paint job. Let's try to get I'll apologize in advance for my camera and how crappy it is. Yeah, as you can see, there's no real 3D relief except for these vents here on the engines. They're just flat. And it's like, I understand that's how it was in the, you know, it's how the CG model was, you know, so they followed that faithfully, and on one hand I appreciate that, but on another hand it's like, you know, they've embellished other ships before. Why not embellish this aspect of this particular ship? You know? You notice here, I know you can't see it too well, but you'll notice here the glow on the engines is blue. Yet on the Eaglemoss model it's purple. You can't really tell it here because of the lighting. Maybe you can tell it a little bit there. Yeah, my camera's struggling. Oh, sorry guys. As far as plastic, you know, clear plastic on the ship, there's only these on the impulse engines, and they're kind of orangish yellow. And on the actual episode, they look a little more red, and some of them don't appear to have the impulse engines lit at all. So, and on some of them, like, they'll have the outside engine lit, and then the inner one will be dark, and then this one will be lit, and then the outer one will be dark. So it's like there's very little consistency, and I think they were trying to do that or I think they were doing that to try to differentiate the ships. This is probably the ship's best angle, in my opinion. That's the John Eves one, I think, was from that angle. But you know, it's cool that we saw a new ship. But it's just unfortunate that it was designed, you know, that it wasn't implemented or executed properly. Now this really bothers me, and it makes me wonder just what the hell they were doing. Okay, so you have this section here, you know, and it's kind of this chunky, you know, mess of lines. Then you have this area here, which is kind of graceful. You know, it's got that nice Starfleet curve around the deflector dish, which isn't lit in the episode, except for these 4 lights. There are 4 lights. I had to. But you see it's kind of graceful here. You know, you got this nice line, and then just, and it's just a flat, a drop there. You know, it's just flat and ugly, and it's like, imagine how much more graceful this design would look if they just kept going. They extended this line all the way to the front, you know, and it was kind of maybe concave here, you know, on the inner portion, and up through here, and you could have it would reflect this line that runs the length of the ship on the top. You know, and it's like, why didn't they do that? think this is one of the shots from the show. And of course you've got these really goofy windows on the side. The windows are another oddity because some of them like touch the top of the rim, you know, whereas others are a little farther down and they kind of go down, you know, when you get to the front of the ship. Yeah, there's just some odd choices that were made on this one. Yeah, don't know what those vents are for. These vents here and here and here. Yeah. So that's your kind of your look at the Zheng He. So for you it'll just be a quick cut, but for me it's actually quite a few months later. I actually ordered the USS Maui, which is the ship with the more bulbous, rounded engines, and I should be getting that here in a couple of weeks. So we'll just cut to that, shall we? Okay, and now we are checking out the USS Maui. And right off the bat you'll notice one big change to this model is that there's actual paneling on the surface of the ship. It's not just kind of vague weathering like on the Zheng He. It's actual paneling. So that, right off the bat, is really cool to see. Give you an overall look at it here. The ship is overall darker in color. Kind of hard for me to get it all in frame because it is so much longer than the Zheng He. You'll notice how much darker it is at the back on the USS Maui versus the Zheng He. Interesting choice. You'll also notice here well, maybe you can or can't notice, but the Bassard collectors here are actually clear plastic that is painted over with a thin layer. It's difficult to see here, but there you can kind of see the two different tones of paint. It's clear plastic that's oversprayed with kind of a fade effect going from red to orange. And when you hold it up to the light, you can see the light through it, so it's definitely a clear insert. I don't know why they decided to make it clear and then paint over it, but that was the decision they made. Let's see here. You can see the bottom. And the engines look pinched, but they're actually that way on the actual book, in the book, and on the show. So that is not actually an error on Eaglemoss's part. And next we'll see here The impulse engines, of course, are red on the Maui, but unlike the Zheng He, Maui's impulse engines are not clear inserts, which are painted on the back. They're either opaque inserts that were painted red, or they're clear inserts that were painted to be red on the outside instead of the inside, thereby negating the effect of the impulse engines. You can kind of see the difference here if I can try to get them in frame together. You can see the difference. The Zheng He's have depth, whereas the ones on the Maui do not. That to me is a plus for the Zheng He, but a negative for the USS Maui. It's a step back, in my opinion. This model has been nothing but steps forward thus far. The impulse engines are the only step back. Now, you have the biggest change between the two. The changes, I guess I'll outline them here. Changes are the paint scheme, obviously the aforementioned paneling, but also this paneling up here, which you can see in the episode. The windows are yellow instead of white, and that's one thing I don't really care for. It makes the Maui look like it's inhabited by a crew full of smokers. I do not like the yellow lighting. But the kind of darker aft section, the different color of impulse engines and Bussard collectors, and of course the biggest change, the engines. These engines are quite a bit bigger than those on the Zheng He. As you can see here, I can barely fit the Mauis in the screen. And if you look at the ones on the Zheng He, you'll see they're very flat, and they're almost two-dimensional, because again they are completely flat and they just have etched paneling. These are just painted on, no clear inserts in there, so there's no depth to the Bussards as well. Whereas on the Maui, you've got an actual engines that are three-dimensional, and the Bussards are actual clear inserts, which automatically gives them a degree of depth that those on the Zheng He do not have. Now, one disappointing feature of both ships is that here you have this is painted in purple, whereas on in the actual show it appears blue. Under certain lighting conditions, this purple paint almost appears to glow. However, in most lighting conditions, it doesn't. And you'll notice here on the aft engines that they painted the end caps on the nacelles, painted them blue because they were glowing in the episode, yet they painted these purple, despite the fact that they were glowing with the same intensity as the aft sections on the nacelles. Just an odd choice, not one that I agree with. but you know, a minor nitpick, I think. Also, one thing you'll notice here is that the windows along the saucer edge on the Maui are actually centered. Unlike the Zheng He, where they actually go up, some of them to the very lip of the saucer edge, and they kind of drift along here. Well, that's the way it was on the actual CG model for the Zheng He. I assumed it was that way for all the ships, given that, you know, it was a copy and paste fleet. But perhaps that was an actual intended difference? I don't know. Everything else is pretty much the same. The bottom has some panel detail, but not a lot. It's still largely just a kind of vaguely weathered shape. So overall, would I recommend bothering to buy the USS Maui? Yeah, sure. There's another one coming out called the USS Toussaint, and that one replicates the Zheng He's paint scheme, sans all this paneling, and the Bassards are orange, and these back here are red, and the windows are white. And honestly, although I prefer orange Bassards, honestly, I think that getting the Maui is the better option, just because everything is overall different. You know, it's not just the engines, it's also having blue back here, and having a darker area back here, and having yellow windows, and red Bassards and red impulse engines, and all of this paneling up here. You know, for me, it's like, if I'm going to bother to buy a variant, I'm going to buy one that, you know, if they're all generally the same, I'm going to buy one that has the most stark contrasts to the one that I already own. So, yeah. But I would recommend this, definitely, you know, if you're a fan. And these will be in the, these are already up for pre-order in the U.S. Eaglemoss shop, so yeah. This is great. I really like it. The engines on this one have the same kind of odd downward forward shift as they do on the Zheng He. But that's a result of this section back here, the area where the pylons meet the secondary hull. It should be a little longer. There needs to be a shim between the pylon and the secondary hull where they meet, because if that was shimmed, you would have, the engines would be straight. So yeah. Anyway, that's it for the USS Maui. Yeah, definitely. I definitely think this one's better than the Zheng He. I like this one more. This one feels more fleshed out. It feels more three-dimensional. You know, it feels like an actual starship, whereas the Zheng He feels it feels unfinished because of these engines. And overall, it feels like less time was put into it than was put into the Maui. So, yeah. Okay, so I wanted to compare the books to the Zheng He and the what they're just calling the Inquiry class. This is the book that came with the USS Maui. And so you'll see two different books, and it's basically the Inquiry class from two different angles. Let's see here. Okay. So here, this is page 4 and 5, and different shots of the one version, the Zheng He version, and that's in the book for the Zheng He. And then in the generic inquiry class, because they're going to have, they're actually releasing all 4 variants that were in the copy and paste fleet. There's 2 different versions like this, and 2 different versions like this, and their paint colors are kind of swapped, basically, is it. And like the impulse engines and the Bassard collectors are different colors. So here's the book for the inquiry class generic book. Basically, it shows the Maui and the, was it the Toussaint or something? Yeah, it shows all 4 variants that they'll be releasing from different angles. Yeah, it looks as though all the text is the same between the 2 books, which I guess I get. It makes a degree of sense. Here's the Zheng He book, and this is page 6 and 7, and this is page 6 and 7 in the inquiry class book. And you can see again, because you can see the different variants, and you can see how the colors kind of match. These 2 have similar colors. These 2 have similar colors. So that's where they kind of show off the color scheme. It's interesting how they have 4 variants of the same class of ship, and like radically different engines. It's very interesting, but you know, time crunch, budget crunch. It's kind of what you have to do. Sometimes, for me, I think it's kind of funny and kind of interesting because I have a fascination with variants. Yeah, and so here's the last couple pages. They're exactly the same from the Zheng He book, except for this one, which it shows, you know, the upcoming ships and the refit discovery is there. So yeah, that's it for the books. Glad I got this version. Actually, like I said, I think it's cooler than the original Zheng He. So yeah, and it's a little more refined in some respects. You know, just in terms of the paintwork, because the paint on this, it looks kind of like it's weathered or dirty. But the paint on this, you can see actual panels, and it makes it feel more like an actual starship. Now on the bottom, it still basically looks dirty on the bottom, but you do have a few panels that you can see that they've outlined here. And I'd love to get the whole fleet. Can't really afford to, so this is about what I'm going to get. But I didn't think that I'd like this version. When I saw it on the show, it didn't really interest me. But holding it in my hands, seeing pictures of it, or not seeing pictures of it, but holding it in my hands and actually seeing it and looking at it from different angles, I do like it. The engines on these they're all kind of tipped forward. So even on the Zheng He, I thought, you know, because sometimes on a lot of these replicas the engines are wonky, just because of how they're packaged or whatever. But all of them seem to be like this. I don't know if it's supposed to be like that, because I mean a lot of people are looking at how the engines on this one sit, and they look like they're pinched at the bottom and like they kind of stick out on the front. Well, I think they're supposed to be that way. Yeah, so if you look at the diagrams here, it looks that way, you know. They're kind of pinched at the bottom because they're kind of wider at the front. That's just the way the CG model was, I guess. So I don't think it's a defect necessarily. I think it's just how it was in the show. So I am kind of surprised at how closely they adhered to the 90s kind of, you know, low res look of it. But I do like it. It was, you know, the first basically 24th century ship we've seen in 20 years. So yeah, I really like this version. I'm glad I got this one. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you found this interesting and perhaps useful. Anyway.